PIC Summit Europe has become a must-attend event for those at all reaches of the photonics circuit's value chain. The PIC sector is so aptly defined by the notion of a complete and interconnected ecosystem, and the chance for stakeholders across industry, academia, and research to gather regularly is imperative to sustain growth. The 2025 showcase was held in Eindhoven last month. Host PhotonDelta welcomed more than 700 attendees from around the world for sessions spanning topics of both long-standing and newfound relevancy to the PIC sector. In today's Spotlight interview, we speak with PhotonDelta CEO Eelko Brinkhoff, who recaps the event and shares his key takeaways. There is positive momentum guiding the PIC sector forward, Brinkhoff says. It is evident in several areas, including the recent wave of startup funding that is growing in Europe, as well as heightened understanding of the value that photonic chips bring to diverse applications. Now, the need to upscale is at the fore, and that, Brinkhoff says, is very much central to PhotonDelta and the PIC sector broadly. We'll also discuss global trends as Europe's photonics industry continues to foster meaningful collaboration in Asia and North America. Dr. Brinkhoff was appointed CEO of PhotonDelta in 2023. We'll look back at his first 2 years at the helm of the company.
Today's episode is brought to you by Hamamatsu Corporation, a leading manufacturer of devices for the generation and measurement of infrared, visible, UV light, and X-rays. Hamamatsu is dedicated to the advancement of photonics through extensive research and offers specialized systems for select applications. Visit hamamatsu.com to learn more.
This is Spotlight from All Things Photonics, featuring intimate sit-down conversations with preeminent figures in optics and photonics. Unscripted, timely, and topical, this series shines the spotlight on industry-leading changemakers, covering all corners of the photonics landscape, from the gateways of progress to the most impactful challenges of our time.
So the first thing I want to talk about, it's sort of a timely topic, is PIC Summit. This is not the first PIC Summit. Obviously, this event has grown over its lifetime. PhotonDelta remains at the center. What were the core messages of this year's summit, and what were the core takeaways?
Yeah, I think the core messages that we see is that in Europe, we really need to scale from pilot lines to volume production. A lot of money has been invested in pilot lines, but can we transfer that also to volume production? I think the public-private partnership that we need to create for the funding of the companies, for scaling up, for building the infrastructure and building the robust supply chain. Also, more market-driven approach, working with the end-user system integrators for the adoption of the PIC technology to accelerate this. And also, put strategic emphasis, let's say, on the value chain in PICs. Make sure that we have it. Build also international partnerships, because we cannot, in the end, we still cannot do everything ourselves. And secure our own industrial capacity. And in doing so, the talent development, that was also a topic that passed by, as well as knowledge sharing. And that's important, If we want to succeed, we need to work together. Now, of course, if you look at the main market topic, and that the whole morning of the PIC Summit and the first day was AI is the killer app. We don't need to talk about anymore what photonic chip technology brings. It's actually happening. The market pool's there, and it's really accelerating the industry, the solutions, as well as pulling in a lot of new players, making investments, and also helping us to mature our industry.
You may have mentioned one just with AI, but there is this notion of an evolution, right? We're not talking about what PIC technology is or what it can do or why it's good, and we're not talking about the need in the future to scale. That need is very present right now. Yeah. How would you, or what would you say are the current pressure points? Is there one that sort of is top above the other, or are there several that are now converging?
No, I think it's still the scaling. So we need to be able to manufacture these photonic chips. We have different materials, different platforms that we work on. Not all of them are mature. I think silicon photonics is most mature, but it's closest to CMOS. You can really put it in the infrastructure that's already there. But now you see with global foundries, TSMC really stepping in, that's maturing fast. But if you look to silicon nitride and indium phosphide, those are materials that thin film lithium niobate. Everybody believes have a function, have something to offer, but we still need to scale the industrial capacity of manufacturing those chips. So that's one part. The other part is also still in the testing and the packaging. There's still challenges on the testing and the packaging that's time consuming. It's semi-automated. The testing is also difficult. It's not with CMOS. You can do it from wafer level. You still have to do it on chip level. And also, and this is also happening at the chiplet, the system approach, where we build these unique chips, each from different materials, and we want to combine them together in one new system that outpaces every individual chips, alone.
In some ways, this type of conversation we're having, an event recap, a catching up of taking shape of or taking scope of the technology landscape, you can have this conversation at any time. And we've had this over the years. Just curious to get your thoughts on where you've noticed the greatest evolution or the greatest progress within this notion of an ecosystem.
If you look back to PhotonDelta, so PhotonDelta started 2018 in the first phase, primarily focused on, putting equity in company, trying to be able to scale them, most of them in the value chain, so not on the application side. In the recent years, we're on the application side, so we're really funding companies that come with a solution to the market, which is not only datacom. So it's also into mobility, it's also in the agri-food, it's in the healthcare, it's now also defense, which is also an interesting development to watch. So that's one part. The other part is that, we see the foundries, and we have a pure play foundry on the indium phosphide, so the chips can be made. But then you still see that it takes time to package these chips, and it's also semi-automated. So if we can scale, can we scale from design, foundry, and the packaging all at the same time? If when that's out of balance, then we're going to hit our limitations as well. And over there, I think we need some help and support from the semiconductor industry. So what really changed in the past year is that companies from the semiconductor industry stepped into our ecosystem in our industry. For us, the greatest example close by, ASML. ASML, they were keynote at PIC Summit. They're stepping in. They have some technology that they also want to see if it has benefits for photonic chips. So they started to invest in it. So we see these big companies, TSMC, Global Foundries, really stepping in. And we need them. We need them to mature our industry. We need their knowledge, expertise, experience, especially in how we can scale together, how we can solve some of the bottlenecks that you still see in the yield, and as well as the speed of ramping up, as well as delivering large volumes.
The PIC sector, maybe more than other sectors, is really gauged by the strength of the ecosystem. And PhotonDelta, by its nature, by its definition, put that into effect very quickly. In fact, it is an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so that notion is quite familiar. How has the ecosystem model evolved, if at all, as the PIC sector has matured? I mean, is the ecosystem now larger or wider?
Yes. Well, we had a conversation this morning at a company visit. We spoke about 2018, and when the first funding in the Netherlands, public funding came, have grown this ecosystem. We spoke about 5-6 companies. National Growth Fund started in the Netherlands in 2023. We had 8-9 companies involved in that program, and that's really an innovation push and trying to get this market pull as well. If we look nowadays, we have 75 companies in our ecosystem where we call ecosystem partners. They're in the value chain, they're on the application side, the technology partners, and the tech suppliers, so equipment suppliers. And it's growing 10 by year. Also if you look to in a national growth fund. We're going to start with phase 2, a 3-year program. We're going to invest another 120 million million euros in it. We are now 30 companies participating instead of the 9 we had 3 years ago. So the ecosystem is growing, and not only in the Netherlands. I see it in Taiwan, I see it in Singapore, I see it in Japan, I see it in the United States, in UK. It's growing.
You yourself are entering your third year at the helm, CEO of PhotonDelta. Time flies. I don't have to tell you that. In what areas have you found perhaps surprising or most challenging? I suppose my question is, if you would, could you reflect on your first 3 years at the helm?
Yes. I think especially maturing, and that's within PhotonDelta ourselves. And maturing is like the first investments is really like securing some, let's say, the infrastructure,
That's right. Yeah.
stimulate, create the first companies, more on the value chain, and what you now see really the application side as well as the market pools there. And not every company in the ecosystem has a proposition in datacom. But with the market pool from datacom, it's accelerating also the other solutions. For example, in the sensing area, that's also going to speed up. So the acceptance of integrated photonics, where when I started, my first presentations were still about, hey, do you know about this great technology? And now we can really actually talk, hey, we have this great technology. These are the solutions. And, that's only within 2 years.
I think about conversations I have maybe with people in the quantum realm, and so much of what they've done early in their careers explaining what quantum is, and then it's the value pitch, and now finally they arrive at a point, and it seems like you have as well, where you can have these meaningful conversations
Yeah.
about the need to do important things like upscale. We will talk. This is a global conversation. You've mentioned that,
Yeah.
but I want to stay in Europe just for the time being. Do you sense momentum building for startup funding? And you mentioned some of these technology areas, sensing. I would say materials too. There does seem to be positive momentum in that area.
Yes, there is. But still, if you look to the funding, the private funding a European company can get compared to American company, and in America, still we estimate about 4 times bigger tickets that can be given to American companies as they received in Europe. So in Europe, to stimulate that, you see there's more public support needed. So there's investment tools, investment agencies with public money that step in to provide venture capital. So that's happening in the Netherlands. I see that in other European countries as well. But I think also after the Draken report, you also see a different stance, I would say. Attitude is the wrong word, but more a stand from the European Investment Bank, European Innovation Accelerator, what they can do to support this. And we really hope that, with the extra public money that's going to be put in, it's going to leverage also on the private funding. And for example, in the Netherlands, you see that finally also the pension funds, which most of the capital they invest in the US market, they're also looking at, okay, we see this great new solution. We see also the challenging fact that in scaling, we need funding. Public funding alone cannot do that. So that they say, okay, we need to step in and we want to support this.
I wanted to ask about the value pitch coming from PhotonDelta.
Yeah.
Given the fact that you work with companies and stakeholders from such a vast number of disciplines, do you have to tailor the value pitch depending on who the constituent is or who the stakeholder is, or is the value pitch kind of uniform at this point?
I think if you look from an ecosystem perspective, that's a uniform. So in the Netherlands, we built this value chain on the materials, indium phosphide, silicon nitride. With IMEC, we have access to silicon photonics, and silicon photonics, we can also create these partnerships to Taiwan and Singapore and United States, for example. But of course, if you talk about the solution, what it can do, in datacom, it's you need to have a solution ready. If you look to healthcare, we're working on a solution that can actually change the way the industry is working, but we're still getting to prototypes. So there's a in datacom, it's now this is the momentum to catch also your market share, to have your position in this particular market. But on the sensing side, I still see companies pitching to us for getting some funding, coming with solutions that nobody thought about before.
Mhm.
That's still possible. Um, and of course, if you look to defense, for example, and that's more geared toward national governments, whereas on the sensing side and the healthcare, maybe it's more towards hospital or the medical care. And then in agri-food, you see that the take-up of new technology could be faster because there's rules and regulations are less than, for example, in the healthcare. So I think overall the starting point is uniform, and this is our ecosystem. This is what we have developed. This is the companies that are in it. These are the challenges. But if you look to the solution side, yeah, then it really depends on where are you on the technology readiness level. Do you have proof points? Do you have companies that already have returning business, or do we still need a fund? And that's also what we're trying to do, the innovation project, to get to a prototype in 2-3 years, or get to design ins. So in the final phase, yeah, there's of course a change in story in where you see the market.
There, this is maybe an American centric question. Europe has the IMEX, it has
Mhm.
Silicon Austria Labs, Fraunhofer, Leti. That is a distinctly European dynamic. Can you just speak to the value that that dynamic establishes for Photon Delta and perhaps the PIC sector more broadly?
Yes. No, I think if you look to fundamental and applied research, Europe has always been in the forefront. Our challenge is to get also commercial success out of it. And there you see that the United States, also in Asia, um, they're often doing a better job in the speed. What you do see with also these knowledge institutes is that they also now create spin-offs. So whereas from 10, 15 years ago, they were still running their projects publicly funded, more and more also privately funded. But now, if they see business opportunities, they create also these spin-offs. So you really see them also accelerating, um, putting new companies in the market, which could be in the value chain, offering a unique solution from design to foundry, testing, packaging, or on the application side. So they are really creating also new companies that I think 10, 15 years ago, they wouldn't have had created, or they would have. So their model has changed as well, which is, I think, very beneficial for Europe to to create more winners or more unicorns.
We mentioned this idea of globalization in this year's PIC Summit. You had innovation delegations from Taiwan, Japan, Singapore. Certainly, there are relationships with Korea. That may not be new, but it is growing. I think it's fair to
Yeah.
say. So my question is, how is the ability of Photon Delta ecosystem members to build with and within Asia growing?
Yeah, I think in the past years we invested quite a lot of time in going there to these markets to understand what they're doing, to also make them aware of what we're doing and what we could offer them. I invested myself a lot of time in it. What you now see is that Photon Delta and the ecosystem, with dedicated support and dedicate also to only PICs, you can really create and build an ecosystem. So they want to learn from us in how you can build such an ecosystem, the do's and don'ts, and what it can offer. But at the same time, you see that for us itself, if you look at our value chain, we have a complete value chain in indium phosphide, silicon nitride, which is nowhere in the world. It's such a dense area. So if you look to Taiwan, they come from semicon CMOS, stepping into silicon photonics, but they don't particularly have indium phosphide as well as silicon nitride. And I think the challenge for all of us is, okay, we see these materials have unique properties that all have something to offer in a solution to a certain market, that these unique properties will be combined in new systems. And I think the challenge for everyone is how we're going to combine that. How can we going to combine? So you need to go also to the source where you can manufacture them, and we call them the critical control points, the foundries, in how what brings the future, and how, for example, also have you taken into consideration in the design how you're going to package it, and if you're going to package it in a chiplet with different, what is needed for that. And I think we're, because we have the foundry, we are at the forefront also in trying to come up with new solutions, and at the same time we need the experience for CMOS silicon photonics in building the new systems for the future. So I see it's a win-win. I also see that companies from our ecosystem are collaborating, for example, with Taiwan. I see Fix with E3, but also I heard another company, startup company, that, you know, E3 or one of the companies has something to offer. Effect works with Win. So, momentum is going. They find each other. We try to build a bridge. We try to connect them, and in the end, it's up to them, of course, to see also the business and market opportunities or the innovation cooperation.
It has been quite a bit of work to build those bridges and establish
Yes.
those relationships. Suppose we have this same conversation 1 year from now in December 2026.
Yes.
What would you hope to accomplish over this next year, just in terms of continuing to foster that positive momentum in Asia?
I think, we're building these international partnerships, that some of the bottlenecks that we have, that we've been able to solve some of them faster than we could have done alone. I hope that also in innovation cooperation, the sharing of knowledge and expertise and working together on projects has matured the ecosystem, both in the Netherlands and in this case, for example, Taiwan or Japan. And in the end, of course, we also hope it generates in the end business. And that because we have this great ecosystem, but in the coming years, it really depends on the success of it. Really depends if it can be commercial successful.
You mentioned AI taking over the first part of PIC Summit this year. Um, in a broad sense, what's the attitude towards AI? And I really mean to ask, we hear all the time about this sort of limitless potential and the need to control that or apply it in a meaningful way. At some point, we need actionable results, I think, in order to find success. What's
Mhm.
the attitude towards AI right now?
Well, if you look from our point of view now, is that, with the language models, you have a challenge in keeping up with the growth in data, the energy consumption, and the bandwidth that is needed, and the speed. And PICs have something to add to that. I understood that someone told me last week, if you build a data center that consumes 1 gigawatt of electricity by using PICs from processor to processor, you could save up to 300 megawatts, 20-30% less energy consumption by using photonic chip technology. So I think the talk in our ecosystem, the talk of our town, is really how PICs can really solve some of the challenges in AI. And we need to do something, because with the current growth, in 2035, if we cannot keep up, the whole world's going to get to a blackout. So something needs to happen. You can build, but it needs also to be on technology side, or the language models need to become more efficient. And yes, still on with ASML, they can still go smaller. So that's one. I think the use of AI, yeah, personally, ChatGPT, I use it quite a lot. I'm a non-technician in a technical world. It really helps me
Oh,
to
I feel that
understand
one. Yeah.
things. It really helps me to understand things better, faster. So for me, it saves a lot of time. And of course, there's talks in accountancy, um, maybe also in government task. Yeah, how it will affect everybody. We don't see productivity growth yet in Europe. I think the way we look at Europe in how you could use AI for human being is somewhat different than in the United States and China. Um, I'm not going to be judging on that. I think that there are reasons why we look at certain things. But if I only see the impact on language models also in our work, what it can do and how much faster you can create good content, or can check your content, or can check your resources, or can ask questions that I don't need to search for in a book or dictionary. And still, you need to be very careful in what's the truth. But yeah, uh, it is changing things. And hopefully it will create some more space to as for me as a human being to learn other things.
Trying to squeeze this and harness this it is ultimately limitless potential of AI into an actionable into something actionable for the PIC sector. I want to give you the final word here. Just talk about the overall health of the PIC sector? We mentioned that you're entering your third year as CEO of PhotonDelta. You've seen it grow. You've seen the sector grow. In terms of the health, are we in a good spot here?
Yeah, but okay, but we still need funding. The value of death is there, and for each company, it will be at a certain time. Most of the companies are still entering this. So if we want to secure that these companies, so we need the funding, and of course we need the entrepreneurship, and we need the market pool. So I think one of the challenges also within Europe, but I think anywhere in the world, is the adoption of PIC technology. I think in Europe the industry is quite conservative. So if we can accelerate the industry adoption, we can create market pool for great technologies that maybe take too long for the companies today to be commercial successful. But these technologies will find their way. The only thing is we can support it and not delaying it by creating the market pool and making sure that we can fund them with public and private funding for them to overcome the value of that and also to help them scale. Because scaling is another thing. For scaling, you also need a lot of funding. And, if you're in deep tech and hardware, where maybe the return on investment is not in 5 years, but in 10 years, you need patience. You need investors that are willing to look at that long term and stick to it. And those are still where I have some concerns, and that's also why we're going to reach out to the public, to the European Union, to our national government, that we still need support in overcoming some of the bottlenecks, trying to improve the processing time, the yield, but really trying to get their support in scaling with the industry.
Dr. Eelko Brinkhoff, our guest on the All Things Photonics podcast. On the heels of PIC Summit 2025, we look forward to seeing you at Photonics West and speaking again in the new year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.